without further ado, I am so excited and grateful to introduce you to Ping Ho of UCLA Arts and Healing. Ping Ho is a familiar face for many of you. She has joined us for many of our AME Institutes. She is incredible. And UCLA Arts and Healing is bringing us a very special speaker today, Bonnie Harnden, and she's going to introduce Bonnie and talk a little bit about UCLA Arts and Healing. But thank you so much for being here. Ping, welcome.
Thank you so much for all the forward-thinking work that you're doing. So at UCLA Arts and Healing, I'd love to just tell you for a few minutes about it. We teach professionals and others how to integrate the arts with mental health practices for self-discovery, connection, and empowerment. And these are all practices that anyone can use. I'd like to tell you first of all about our free monthly Hope series. So if you sign up on our website, it's uclaartsandhealing.org. I'll actually put it in the chat bar. You can be notified of our free presentations that are aimed at supporting the resilience of our global community. So they're for self-care as well as tools that you can use with others. And we actually specifically have one coming up on February 26th from 1 to 2 in the afternoon. It's a Saturday, on strengthening emotional resilience in children and teens through art. We also offer a social emotional arts on a shoestring training that includes 4 different art forms: art, movement, music, and writing, for individuals and groups in any setting. So this program comes with a scripted manual. It's designed to accommodate different ages, abilities, and amounts of time available for delivery, and it's designed for settings where there are few resources available. And we also offer a Beat the Odds training it's an evidence-based, trauma-informed program that integrates the power of contemporary drum circles with group counseling. And finally, I'd like to mention that we offer a certificate program in social emotional arts for those who want to learn how to design, deliver, and evaluate their own effective programming. And this includes best practices in 6 different art forms, best social emotional arts practices. So again, all of our programming has dual benefits for self-care as well, and we encourage you to sign up to receive our notices. So we are so privileged today to be able to learn from the remarkable Bonnie Harnden, whose work I have personally found to be incredibly meaningful. Bonnie is a drama therapist, psychoanalyst, couples and family therapist, and associate professor in Concordia University's Creative Arts Therapies Department, where she is the option coordinator for the drama therapy program. She's developed and is coordinating a new graduate certificate in play therapy. Her previous work focused on the effects of trauma and its impact on development in children and adults. Her current work focuses on factors that support the resolution of trauma and that create resilience. Bonnie was the recipient of the 2019 Concordia President's Excellence in Teaching Award. She was awarded the 2017 Research Award from the North American Drama Therapy Association for her play and film You Arrive, which is in production. So this film is based on her therapeutic work and research with suicidal youth at Montreal Children's Hospital. In 2018, she was awarded the North American Drama Therapy Association Teaching Excellence Award. Bonnie is also a member of the teaching faculty for UCLA Arts and Healing. And I want to mention to those of you who are as inspired by her presentation today as I have been, she has a training on awe and gratitude for healing, renewal, and social action that is going to be online on Sunday, February 13th from 9 to 3:30. For those of you who would like to go deeper into this work. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bonnie Harnden.
Thank you so much, Ping. That was so nice. So I think I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I think I can. Oh yeah, okay. So, let me just, I'm just going to do something quickly. Sorry. Hang on, just bear with me. let me see if that worked. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Good. Can everyone see that first slide? Yeah, okay. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm a professor in Montreal, and this presentation is coming from Jogjaga, Montreal. And Jogjaga, Montreal is located on unceded Indigenous lands, and the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which this presentation is coming from today. Jogjaga, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So we're going to be doing a lot of things today. I'm going to be kind of talking through a lot of complex theory in hopefully really simple, clear ways as we go. And at moments I'll stop sharing the screen and we'll do a little experiential exercise, and I'll get some feedback in the chat from what we're doing. And at the end, if there's time, we'll have a little question period. And I'm going to be talking a lot about the science of awe and gratitude, and how can we come back into the stream of life? How can we become present in our lives again? And how can we move out of these high states, these nervous system states of fight, flight, and freeze, and come back into being in the stream of life, present for our unfolding experience, and present in our relationships, present in our work, and really fall in love with the experience of being alive. The science of awe and gratitude is quite profound in terms of its healing effects on our bodies. And I'm going to try to give you all some really simple hacks of things you can do to kind of build and use the theory on awe and gratitude to heal your nervous systems. And we're going to be working on some really simple things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about interoception. And interoception is basically our capacity to notice our internal states and to notice our hearts racing, to notice our nervous system moving into parasympathetic and into sympathetic. And I'm going to give you a couple of little hacks on how to do that. And the research is really pointing to the better we are at noticing our nervous systems, the better we are at observing and calming down after stressful life events. I'm also going to talk about extraception and this idea of getting better at noticing our surroundings, especially noticing beauty and what's working. One of the things that's so profound when we think about our bodies and our nervous systems is that we tend to have a negativity bias. So we tend to notice what's not working in our environment much faster than we notice what's working. And it's how we've survived for millions of years. As animals, we tend to tune towards danger much faster than we tune towards beauty or gratitude. It's just this negativity bias that's very much in our systems. And I'm going to talk today about that negativity bias and how it's important. It keeps us safe, but how we also need to retrain our eyes to see beauty and to help our nervous system settle and to build something called vagal tone, which helps us calm down after stressful life events. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about noticing beauty and leaning into awe and gratitude, not to kind of wear rose-colored glasses and not engage with suffering, but the evidence that's so profound that it seems that is pointing to again and again and again, in that the more we notice what's working in our lives, the more we engage with gratitude and moments of beauty, moments of grace, the more capacity we have to stay with suffering and to actually feel our feelings as they're moving through. And the more capacity we have to bear witness to the suffering in others and the suffering in ourselves. So when I talk about us doing these simple hacks to help our nervous systems heal and to use the science of awe and gratitude, it's not to make us avoidant and to not make us avoid negative feelings. It's actually the opposite. The research is pointing to the more we notice what's working, the more we're able to stay present and notice what's not working and not get overwhelmed by what's not working in our lives, to actually engage and actually take action. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how awe and gratitude can help us heal from trauma and also prevent trauma. And I'm going to try to give you some simple things that you can use with your students to also harness these benefits. And when we talk about healing trauma and healing our nervous systems, we're really talking about regulation and being able to return to a regulated state after something stressful happens. Research is kind of pointing again and again and again. We're going to do something, we're going to use the science of awe and gratitude to help our nervous systems become more robust and to build vagal tone. And I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. And when we have good vagal tone, we return back to baseline much faster after stress. When our vagus nerve isn't working well, and it's very implicated in the nervous system, when stressful things happen, we tend to stay dysregulated for longer and longer periods of time. So we're going to be talking about our internal dialogue and developing more self-compassion and building the upward spiral effect. So one of the things that's so significant about depression that they've researched again and again and again is something called the downward spiral effect. And the downward spiral effect is when we start to ruminate and have negative thoughts and negative self-talk, we tend to have more depression in our bodies, we have more inflammation, and this downward spiral effect starts happening. I'm going to give you some really simple little hacks that you can do to do the opposite, to build the upward spiral effect. And the upward spiral effect is a very simple thing that's being researched right now. And there's quite robust research coming out that when we notice what's working and spend a little bit more time with it, when we notice things that we can feel grateful for in our lives, we tend to have more, seek out more positive social connections. And as we do that, our vagal nerve literally tones. And again, I'm going to explain this in much more detail. And then we have more positive emotions. So we literally start creating the opposite of the downward spiral effect that's implicated in depression. We can build this upward spiral effect. And we're really noticing in the research that gratitude, people that have gratitude, experience gratitude, cultivate gratitude, have better life satisfaction overall. And people that cultivate gratitude in their relationships have better relationship satisfaction overall. And this has been very well researched, even in long-term couple life, where they've shown that couples that are grateful for each other, even if they have terrible communication skills, are actually much more happier over time. And I'm going to talk about that as well as we go. So I'm going to explain a little bit what a healthy nervous system is, and then a more traumatized nervous system. And this is Peter Levine's work, and how what we're going to be doing today in these little hacks is helping our nervous systems become more robust and more resilient, so that we return to a more settled state faster. So with our nervous systems are going into sympathetic and then out into parasympathetic all day. There's this really normal regulation that's happening all the time. So if Jack takes in an in-breath, he has this rise into sympathetic. When he breathes out, his nervous system goes into parasympathetic. So there's this normal rhythm of regulation we make all day. So say Jack is rushing to get to work and he's late. His nervous system is going to go into a sympathetically dominant state. He's going to have blood flow turn on higher. He's going to feel a bracing in his chest. His heart is start going to beating really fast. His muscles are going to contract. And he's going to go into this sympathetic rise as he's rushing to get out the door. And when he gets to work, and maybe he gets there early, and he gets a really good cup of coffee, or maybe he's a tea drinker, I don't know, Jack, maybe you'll tell me, and he settles a little bit, his nervous system will come right down into a parasympathetic state. So he's had this really good sympathetic rise to get him there, mobilizing, he's rushing, and then he settles down into parasympathetic. He's made it on time. Now, when we go into a sympathetic state, our vision narrows, our hearts start beating, and all our systems go into energy conservation mode. So if Jack's just had a big breakfast and he started to digest, the moment he starts racing to work, his digestion will turn off. the body basically says, you're going to put all your resources into rushing right now, and you're turning off everything else. So as he goes into sympathetic, his vision narrows, his digestion turns off. There's going to be a whole host of other really important things that happen, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. And once he settles back down again, his nervous system goes into parasympathetic, digestion will turn back on, his vision will widen. When we're in parasympathetic, cellular turnover happens, neurogenesis happens in parasympathetic. And one of the really interesting things that's coming out of the research right now in learning theory is that we learn best in parasympathetic. So we learn best when we feel settled and relatively safe. So we used to think that kids learned when they felt a bit more challenged or scared, or they were getting critical feedback, but we actually have realized that the opposite is true, that we learn best when we're in a more expanded, settled state. So what is so important about this is that a lot of the kids that we work with, and a lot of us, have nervous systems that don't make this nice pendulation. Our nervous systems literally do this. They come down a little bit, but they can stay stuck on in more of a hypervigilant state, or stuck on off. So what has happened basically is that when people have experienced a lot of trauma and stress, their nervous systems will stay in what they call a sympathetic dominant state. So as their systems have risen into fight, flight, freeze, say Jack is rushing somewhere, or say he's running from a fire, his nervous system will go into full-on survival response. So he won't be if he's rushing to work, his nervous system will engage a little bit. But if he's running to survive a fire, his nervous system will engage a lot, and he'll go up into a high state of fight, flight, freeze, where everything is stuck on in order to survive. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why after stressful life events, people don't settle back down again. And we can talk about that a little bit more if there's time. But a lot of people get stuck in this state of sympathetic dominance where their nervous system doesn't settle down enough. They stay up in this sympathetic dominant state, and they live their lives in this kind of hypervigilant state. And I'm going to talk about what that does to the body over time. It's quite significant, actually. So a lot of the kids that we work with have grown up in situations where they don't feel safe, where there's a lot of fighting going on. They don't know if they're going to be fed. They don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. And their nervous systems can be stuck in a sympathetic dominant state all day long. So the nervous system, sometimes something very traumatic will happen, and our nervous systems do come back into this normal regulation. But a lot of the times, nervous systems get stuck into the sympathetic dominant state. And there's some things that are so important to know about the state, because when you're in a sympathetic dominant state, your nervous system is still charging into fight, flight, freeze, and your body never feels good. It always feels anxious. So if my name is Sam, and I'm in a very scary environment, maybe there's a lot of violence in my house, or I don't know if my parents are going to be home, my caregivers are going to be home at the end of the day. I don't know if there's going to be food on the table. My neighborhood doesn't feel super safe. I may come to school in a fight, flight, freeze state. If I'm in a fight, flight, freeze state and Jack is trying to teach me something, it's going to be much harder for me to take that in, because I'm not in parasympathetic. I'm in a sympathetic state. I'm in this get ready mode, get ready. I'm not in this expanded. When we're in parasympathetic, we're able to do abstract thinking much faster. We just learn better. But when we're in sympathetic, we're in survival mode. So Jack might be trying to teach me something, and I might be much more orientating to danger in my environment, afraid. Either starting a fight with my neighbor, because if I'm stuck in fight, I may start a fight before the fight comes to me. If I'm so used to living in violence, one way to have mastery, and kids do this a lot, is they'll kind of stay stuck in fight and they'll start fights. Or I might be stuck in flight, where I'm looking towards the door all the time and trying to escape and trying to get to the next thing. Or I might be stuck in freeze, where my nervous system is turned off and there's kind of a deadness about me. So if Jack is trying to teach me and I'm in a sympathetic state, or Jack himself, or if I'm Jack, or if I'm in a sympathetic state as an adult, I will be experiencing all of this too. Now, what is so significant about being stuck in sympathetic is that what they're showing in the research is that the vagus nerve turns on our parasympathetic system. So what happens is that we have this nerve in our spine called the vagus nerve, and it goes down our back and it's attached to pretty much every major organ in our body. And then there's a ventral part of it that comes up through our chest and is activated through eye contact. Now, if I have good vagal tone, my vagus nerve will turn on my parasympathetic system faster. So if I'm Sam and I've had a lot of trauma, like many people, I will have poor vagal tone, because what they're showing when people have a lot of trauma and stress, they have poor vagal tone. It's like a muscle that doesn't work very well. It's kind of, it doesn't turn on when it's needing to. So I'm Sam, I've had a lot of trauma, I'm sitting in class, something stressful happens, I get even more into fight, flight, freeze, and I settle down. It takes me a lot longer to settle down than, say, Sarah, I'm sitting beside, who has good vagal tone. So the vagus nerve tells our systems it's okay to go into parasympathetic. You're safe. You can settle. So I do this. I return from a stressful event faster. I go into this nice parasympathetic state. Now, when you have poor vagal tone, you have less capacity to settle down. You tend to be more vulnerable to depression. There's a lot of effects of poor vagal tone. And what we're going to do today is some very specific things for each of you to build vagal tone so your parasympathetic system will come on. Because probably most of you are carrying a certain amount of trauma just by being alive in the world and being a human. But you're also living in tremendous stress. And as teachers, you're also in many ways frontline right now. You're living the pandemic in a very, very particular way. And I think with a lot more stress than many people, and that you're dealing with kids and you're having to teach, and you're also dealing with your nervous system and their nervous system. So these little simple hacks to build vagal tone to help you come back into this more settled state faster is something we're going to talk about a lot. So is everyone following me so far? I'm just going to stop my share for a sec so I can see. Yeah, you're all following? Okay, so everyone's getting this idea of the nervous system's engagement, right? Sympathetic, rise, parasympathetic, settle. Okay, good, I'm seeing some nods. So vagus nerve comes in and modulates all of that. I'm in sympathetic, my vagus nerve turns on, it's activated through eye contact. We're gonna activate it in a minute, and I settle right back down again. Josh is saying, yeah, good. Okay, so we're all going to try to do some things to start building vagal tone to help our nervous systems settle a little bit more. So one of the things we're just going to do really quickly as a group is just I'd like you to think of 5 things that you feel grateful for right now before we continue. Just 5 things, and it can be the cup of coffee you had this morning. It can be, I'm seeing Gail's headband, which I really love. I can feel grateful for that, Gail. What else? Ping's background. There's all kinds of little things that we can see. David's epic hair up here in my corner. Right, David? So there's all kinds of ways we can notice each other. And I'm going to talk a little bit about gratitude in relationship and seeing people's beauty and how that also builds vagal tone. So 5 things that you feel grateful for, and you can put them. My dog. Nice. Yes. Okay. What else? What else do you feel grateful for? You can unmute for a minute. My home. That it's lighter later. Yes. Coffee in the morning. George, my job. Good. My family. My children. Beautiful day today. My dad's health. My kids. Oh, it's going super fast. I'm missing some good scholarships. My daughter, my dogs, my health, my job. It's almost the weekend. Yes, Elizabeth. So good. My healthy children, my kiddos, my son, clean water, a sunny day. my wife, children, and my ability to draw. This conversation, my husband, the day, Gail. David, my family, my morning cup, my home, my job, my music, good, John Lennon. Oh, that's awesome. My husband, my home, my ideal job, my boys, and our health, good. Chocolate, yes. My dog, student smiles, my family, Coke Zero. That's awesome. My team, homes, health, job, students, good. My students who just got a Presidential Arts nomination, wow, that's amazing. Breath, yes. Monty Python. Russell, health, theater, rehearsals, wow, these are really good. Running, dogs, family, laughter. My colleagues, Laura, my job, teaching space, dog, coffee this morning. My health, all of you like coffee as much as I do, it's so good. My art, my camera collection, my students, parents, my sons, my dog, my health colleagues, Trader Joe's. These are good, really good. Okay, beautiful, beautiful gratitudes. So one of the things I'd really like you to think about doing for the next month is when there's something that you feel grateful for, I'd like you to spend a little bit more time with it than you might normally. Like Gail, you just wrote my art, you know? When you think about your art and you stretch out that feeling just a little longer. You know, Laura, when you think about your students, you know, Russell, when you think about Trader Joe's, when you have these moments of gratitude, I want you to think about them, but hang out with them like a piece of gum. Like, you know, when you're a kid and you stretch out a piece of gum, you want to stretch it out just a little bit longer and notice it. You're building vagal tone, and you're literally like lifting a weight, like literally like you're lifting a muscle. You're actually building vagal tone. So you want to do this thing that I'm going to talk about extraception, perception, noticing the beauty outside of you, noticing these moments of goodness, and then noticing the corresponding introceptive experience. So when I read that just now, those things, I was reading and noticing, I was thinking about breath, but I was also having this inner feeling of expansion. I could feel my nervous system as I was reading the gratitudes back to you, and some of you might have had this too, of feeling a bit of a settling and a warmth. When you feel an expansion in your chest, that's your vagus nerve turning on. You'll literally feel this ventral whoosh. David, it looks like you took a deep breath there, and that's also when you take a really nice deep breath, that's your vagus nerve turning on. It's like a resetting, and you want to make that happen as much as you can. So we're going to do a little introceptive practice, and I'm going to teach you the nervous system sandwich a little bit to do some of this, and then we're going to move on to another experiential activity. So I'm just going to go back and share my screen. Okay. Hang on one sec. Okay, there we are. Okay, so we're going to make the nervous system sandwich together. I know I'm rushing through the theory just because there's a lot to condense. I hope you guys are following, and please stop me if you struggle at all. So we're going to make the nervous system sandwich together, and we're going to do extraception. We're going to notice our environment, and then we're going to do introception. And I'd like you to put any comments of what you're noticing in the chat as we go, but I'll prompt you. So what I would like you to do is just take a minute to look around your room where you're sitting and just notice your environment. And let your eyes go where they want to go. And I'd like you to think about how could you work a little less hard in this moment? Do you need to get a little bit more comfortable on the chair you're on? Just notice, how can I work a little less hard, and let your eyes go where they want to go. And I would invite you to let your eyes orientate to something that's beautiful in your environment. Don't, if there's clutter in your environment that makes you feel a little sympathetic and stressed, I wouldn't orientate to that. I would orientate to something that's pleasing. Find something pleasing in your environment. And just notice as you work a little less hard, just notice if you've come into the room a little bit more, if you've come back a little bit more. And then that's the beginning of a bit of a parasympathetic settling thing that we're doing. We're coming a bit into parasympathetic. And I'm going to prompt you to do the next. So we just did the first bun of the sandwich. We orientated. And animals in nature do this all the time, where you'll see meerkats do this at a watering hole, where they'll literally come up and they'll scan their environment. And basically, they're scanning their environment for, what do you think they're scanning their environment for? Anyone can? David, I didn't hear what you said.
Predators.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So they're scanning their environment for predators. And when they see that there's no predators, they go a little bit into parasympathetic and they drink. And we are scanning our environment for predators all the time. We just don't realize that we're doing it. So if you walk out of your house, you'll start scanning all the time. You're just orientating to your environment. So that orientating thing and noticing that there's nothing scary in your environment right now, that you're relatively safe, is important to do. It just turns the parasympathetic on, and you can do it just sitting in your car on the way to work or on the way home. You can notice what you're noticing. Just scan and notice your feet on the ground. You can wiggle. If your feet are on the ground, I would just invite you to wiggle your toes. Just notice that your feet are on the ground and the ground's connected to the earth, and that you're here. You're here a little bit. And we're just doing a little bit of a knocking ourselves back into being more present. And we're present the most when we're in a bit more of a parasympathetic state. So we're going to do the next part of the sandwich. I would invite you to think of something lovely. And it can be your partner's smile. It can be a nice moment that you had today. It can be a nice moment that you had a long time ago. It can be, someone said John Lennon. It can be hearing the music of John Lennon. I think David was talking about music that you love, creating music. Someone was talking about Gail was talking about her art practice. Something that just makes you feel some touching into joy and grace. So I want you to just think of whatever that might be. And it can be really simple. It could be your dog, some of those simple gratitudes we had. And just notice it. And I would invite you, as you notice it, to notice this feeling of settling even more. So as you generate that positive memory or that gratitude, you might feel a kind of settling and a feeling of expansion in your chest. You might spontaneously take a deep breath. And you're coming down a bit more into parasympathetic. Now, what's so important to know is that as you settle into parasympathetic, your nervous system will naturally come back up into sympathetic. It does that all the time. So if we sat here for a few minutes, it'd be very normal for you to start to feel some bracing and some activation. Or if you have a lot of trauma and stress in your body, it'll happen very quickly. And it'll feel like it's happening as a thought, like, I'm not doing this right, or you might be thinking about the negative parts of whatever you just thought about. And I don't want you to look for red or sympathetic, but just notice in the ways that it might be there. If your throat is tightening, if there's bracing in your chest, if you did have that kind of thought that I was just talking about. And it usually appears as a thought, but what they're showing is that it's happening in the body first. There's a sympathetic charge, and then our minds make sense of it. So, and that's okay. I want you to just notice how you experience your sympathetic system coming on. And just imagine that you could be with it and keep looking around and orientating, noticing that there might be some settling happen, some expansion happen as you think about your blue, what we call a blue moment. And notice that there can be some red too, and that that's okay. And one of the most important things I want you to remember from this sandwich is when you do this on your own, try not to go to the thoughts. Try to go to the sensation. So if David had a negative thought of like, oh, I forgot to deal with that thing, or that thing tomorrow is really stressful, I would want him to notice the corresponding bracing and not build the rumination of like, oh, and then there's that, and then there's that, and then there's that. So I would want him to stay more with the sensation, because when you stay with the sensation, it's much more likely to settle down on its own as opposed to build into a full-on red state. It's the same way of like if Gail is lying in bed and she can't sleep, If she builds the thoughts, she'll stay awake for longer. If she notices the sensation of the fear or whatever's happening inside of her, it'll come down faster. And you always want to be making this sandwich around whatever sympathetic state is happening inside of you. So if David's having a really stressful day and the kids are not listening, or he's just like fed up, or there's politics at school, or whatever might be happening, he's having this very red, sympathetic, like, why am I doing this? He's going to want to orientate as he's walking out to his car to go for lunch, or look around, notice something blue in his environment, orientate to something beautiful, remember a good moment. His nervous system will come down just a little, and he'll be more present. And what I want to leave you with, and I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of other hacks now, is when there's a blue moment that's just happening organically, whether you generate it or it's happening organically, you want to really notice the corresponding sensation. So you want to notice it perception-wise, and then notice it in your own system and settle there and just take some time there. So would it be okay to just put some comments in the chat about what you noticed as you did that? What did you notice? Calming. Good. Good. Possibly for right. Changes in breathing. Good. Noticing, Jack. Good. Good. Changes in my breath and shoulders. Breathing deeper, calming, feeling lighter. Good. Okay. Feel like I'm recentered. Good. Really good. Relaxing in my shoulders. Good. Closing my eyes. Good. This is all parasympathetic. Floating. So it's taking deep breaths. Good. So we really need both sympathetic and parasympathetic, but we need to bring our bodies into parasympathetic, like we just did a little bit. And we're going to do that more by building vagal tone now, noticing where I'm holding tension, tearing up a bit. Good. Yes. That's also what we would call deactivating, to tear up a little bit. All right. That's coming down into parasympathetic. Often we have some sadness and emotion and feel moved as our system's coming out of sympathetic into parasympathetic. Now, one of the things I really want you to think about is that when we're in a sympathetically dominant state for a long period of time, where people's systems aren't coming into these yummy parasympathetic states enough, their systems are, say, stuck on. The problem is that in parasympathetic, there's tremendous cellular turnover, rejuvenation that's happening in the body when we're in a parasympathetic state. So when we're not fully coming down into parasympathetic, remember, digestion happens in parasympathetic, abstract thinking happens in parasympathetic. When we're not fully coming down, our bodies aren't healing in the same way. And they're really showing that when people stay in a sympathetic dominant state for a long period of time, they're much more vulnerable to all kinds of disease processes because they're not getting this settling into parasympathetic. The other thing that's so important to know about sympathetic dominance is that, say one of you has a car accident, something really stressful happens, something traumatic happens, or you just have trauma in your nervous system, your body's going to, brace, get ready, go into fight, flight, freeze, have this huge activation response. But if you're stuck after the trauma is over and your system could return back, what happens so often is that, and I saw this happen this week, I was working with a doctor, and he was talking about all these stressful things happening at the hospital and this very stressful surgery he had to do. And he had these very stressful things happening. So his nervous system mobilized. And after a time, it was mobilized to deal with this stress. And then what happened was it turned back towards himself. So it wasn't engage, protect my patients, I need to do this thing, COVID. It flipped back. And this is the terrible thing that happens with the sympathetic system, is it flips back towards the self and becomes a toxic inner monologue. So then he started to think, I'm bad. I'm not doing this right. And that's what the stress response does when it's stuck. It becomes a part of a critical self-talk. So you can be, Marjorie can be long after the stressful event has happened, but her nervous system is stuck and it turns back and starts attacking her through this inner monologue of like, I'm bad, I didn't get it right, I should be doing better. And it just becomes a part of her. And then when she's stressed, that monologue turns on. It's the same way. So if Marjorie is more of a flight person, it'll be much more, I'm bad, I didn't do well, I could do this better. If she's a fight person, she'll be more irritable. She'll be more, her inner monologue will be much more like, I'm mad, I'm irritated, they're bad, they didn't do this well. And so it depends on whether we're more fight, flight, or freeze. And if there's time, I'll talk a little bit more about the freeze response. Normally we do all three. We do fight, flight, and freeze in different ways. But some of us, we tend to choose one. We privilege a fight response or a flight response or a freeze response. Now, what is so important about this is that we're wanting to build vagal tone through taking our bodies into more parasympathetic states. And the more we notice what's working, the more vagal tone we have. So I'll try to think of a good example. So Michelle so with our partners, again, there's always that negativity bias that we're counteracting. We may be noticing what's wrong in our relationships. We might be noticing how we're worried about our kids. And all of that is okay, but we want to be building the opposite. So you want to be noticing what is working in your relationship, how much your partner maybe, or your friends, you might feel so grateful for the things that they have and the things that they are in your life. And they're showing in the research that the more we generate gratitude in our relationships, we don't even have to say it to our partners or to our kids, even just generating it in our own thinking. So if Michelle spends time thinking about how awesome her friend is, her relationship with her friend is going to be stronger. Not only that, Michelle, when there's conflict, will be able to actually tell her friend. They're showing this in long-term studies, and they'll resolve the conflict, and the relationship will get stronger. They'll be able to repair ruptures faster. So noticing what's good in our partners, even just generating it is going to improve. Saying it will up the effect. So if Michelle says to her friend, oh my gosh, you're so good at this. And you have to remember that gratitude thrives on specificity. You have to be really specific. So if I said to Ashley, Ashley, it was so nice to meet you. You seem to really care about your job. It was just lovely. She's going to feel good. But if I say, Ashley, when I was talking to you, I could tell how much you actually deeply care about the teachers that you're working with, and you worry about them, and you want their lives to be better, and you see the burden that they're carrying every day, and you feel so protective of them, and you feel protective of the students, and you not only do you care, you deeply care. I see it like in every fiber of your being. I saw it in all aspects of our conversation. So when I'm really specific to someone, the effect of gratitude on them is going to be much stronger. So I am going to be building vagal tone by noticing what's working, but I'm also going to help the people around me build vagal tone by expressing the beauty I see in them in a very specific way. David, if you do that to your partner or to your kids or to the Sam at school who might be a giant pain in the butt, if you notice some of what Sam does that's so good and tell him, you will help him build vagal tone. So what is happening is that when we notice what's beautiful and what's working, and I'm sorry I'm giving you guys such a Reader's Digest version of this, when we spend time in nature, when Marjorie goes for a walk and she actually notices how big the tree is, and she notices the bark, she notices this ordinary magic that we have access to every single day. And nature, time in nature, if you want to build more vagal tone, the research coming out about time in nature and it counteracting cancer, inflammation, trauma in our nervous systems it's unequivocal, and it's going to be huge, the research in the next few years. When Marjorie notices the tree and sees it and smiles to herself and settles, she's built vagal tone. When Russell notices the beauty in his colleague, even a very annoying colleague notices what's working and how good they are at this, and this, the relationship will improve. And not only that, but he will also have better vagal tone. So some of the takeaway messages in the theory is you want to generate gratitude by noticing the cup of coffee, stretching out the feeling of pleasure and drinking it before you move on, forcing yourself in these little hacking ways to come back just a little and notice. When you see your friends smile, or you have a really nice exchange with the person you buy your coffee from, to just notice how good that felt, and to notice that you feel a little bit more present. You're building this muscle of introception and settling, and you're building vagal tone. I know in your day, I mean, the world, there's so much beauty in the world, even though there's so much hardship and pain right now. And when you spend time noticing these little bits of beauty and just staying with them a little bit longer, and it can happen so simply. Like Michelle can just do it for a minute. She can just look out the window as she's teaching the class and see the tree and feel like, wow, that's good, and come back. She will have lifted the weight of building vagal tone, right? So we're wanting to do it in all the little ways, the ordinary magic of our unfolding experience. And we want to do it with the kids we're working with too. Like, what do they love? There's all this research coming out about how learning theory, and that we learn best when we're in parasympathetic, and we learn best building off what we already love, what we're already good at. That's where we can really maximize growth. So the kids you're working with already have things that they love and they're good at, and like hanging out with them in that space, showing them that they're good at that, letting them build from there, that's going to be so good for them. Ashley, how am I doing for time? Am I okay? Okay.
Well, I hate to tell you, we're at time, but this is so amazing that I didn't want to interrupt you. I know you have some resources to share. Do you want to forward those to me and I can forward them to everyone, or do you want to share them now?
Keep going. Keep going.
It's so good, I know.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish by reading a poem. And I've been working with my students to build this anti-burnout workshop and like how to build vagal tone. And we've been living the research together. So I'm going to just finish by reading a poem. I will send some research, and maybe we can do a couple of questions. Ashley, what do you think? Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Maybe what we'll do is we'll break into our communities of practice, and if folks want to stay in this room and ask you questions, they can, but they'll have a choice. But
okay.
Yes, please share your poem.
So two things. What I would like you to do is maybe tonight you can think about an experience of awe that you had. Awe, the experience of awe. When we experience awe, we have less inflammation in our bodies, and we have more pro-social behavior. So we're actually much more connected with this idea of belonging and feeling like we belong in the world. And so I was going to have you guys, if there was time, to write down an experience of awe in as much detail possible, but you can just lie in bed and remember that moment of awe. And there might have been sad moments that came after. Don't focus on the really beautiful moment and how it feels in your body. And that's something that you could talk about in your breakout groups. If there was time, we would make a sentence, 3 movements, and you can just imagine this tonight. What are 3 movements that capture this experience of awe? Awe, out of all the positive emotions, gives us less inflammation in our bodies, and immediate pro-social behavior. So that's just something to think about. So this is a beautiful poem by Derek Walcott that I really love. It's called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, but who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters on the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own images from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. So I hope there'll be some moments going forward when you can feast on your life and notice some of the beauty that's around you, and stay present for the suffering too that's around you. That's the one thing. When we stay present for the beauty, we don't knock into this trauma state. we actually can stay with suffering and sympathetic feelings without going high into trauma. We actually stay present so we can feel the harder feelings of life and not go into that sympathetic dominant state I was talking about, if that makes sense. So the other thing I wanted to say really quickly is that when people, racism is also very much affects the sympathetic system, and a lot of people stay in a sympathetically dominant state because they need to, because the world isn't safe for them. And feeling settled is what the safety is not a reality for many people. They don't feel safe when they leave their houses. So we're thinking more about how can we feel a little bit more connected and settled, and then mobilize for all the work that we have to do ahead, if that makes sense. So I just also wanted to say that. Thank you, Jack. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So glad to be here.